Well, hello and welcome to Promoting Your Library 365. I'm Kathy Lucier, Engagement Manager at NoveList. It's the start of a new year, and many of you have your promotional calendar all set for the coming 12 months, right? Or at least you're thinking through a plan for 2020. Well, if not, don't panic. We are here to help. But first, a question. Is promoting your library in your plan? And does it go beyond a couple of events like National Library Week or Library Card Sign-Up Month? Well, I'll go ahead and say it should be. Whether you have a bond referendum, a funding request, or just want to make sure your community knows the value of your library, you need to promote your library 365. If that sounds overwhelming, take a deep breath. We've got 4 library promotion pros standing by, ready to help, with 4 different ideas for keeping your library top of mind year-round. Each of them has found success in turning patrons into advocates for their library. Now, at the end of the webinar, don't hang up. You'll want to stick around for a tool I used at my library system for year-round advocacy. Quick note, follow along and tweet what you learned at #NovelistConversations. Okay, there's a lot to unpack, so let's get started with our webinar. First up, John Andrews. John is the Internet Services Librarian for Washoe County Library System in Reno, Nevada. He oversees the digital branch, now the library's busiest location. John is part of the library's marketing and communications team and helps to coordinate marketing efforts across all formats. His library has gotten a lot of attention for the way they're promoting their programs and services 365. So we asked him to give you a behind-the-scenes look at how they do it. John?
Hello, everybody, and welcome. Again, my name is John Andrews. I am the Internet Services Librarian with Washoe County Library System. Thank you, Kathy. We are going to talk a little bit today about promoting your library with email newsletters and how that can be an effective tool to reach your patrons. We've been doing that for about 2.5 years. Like many of you, we were doing a print newsletter previously, and we have pretty much transitioned to a digital newsletter for our monthly communications. So why do we want to do this? And really, the most important reason is to meet patrons where they are. Our users are living online lives, and we have to meet them in that space in order to make sure that they're getting what they need from the library or even aware that we exist. So email was a natural solution for that. The other reason was that it's much more cost-effective. Printing is expensive. Mailing was never part of our budget ability. So email gives us a way to inexpensively reach users, and it's scalable. We can reach new users. We can add more and more users to our email lists, and it doesn't increase the cost for us to actually provide the service. So it's a fantastic way, especially if you're on a budget. The other thing that's great is you can start now. You don't need, specialized software is great for doing an email newsletter, but as long as you follow guidelines to ensure that you're not spamming people, you can use Gmail or your Outlook email through your employer in order to start pushing email content to your patrons. So we started 2.5 years ago with just a single newsletter that essentially couple of news items, couple of featured events, and it was just an all-in-one, one-size-fits-all newsletter. It started to grow, and it got a little unwieldy, and so we split it out into 3 different versions. So we currently offer a maker newsletter, an adults library news and events, and a kids library news and events newsletter. And we do this once a month, and I'll show you a little bit about what we feature each month in this email blast. So this is an example from last summer's summer reading program kickoff. So we start every email with a feature, let people know what's going on in the library, the most important thing that we need folks to know about right away. And that's followed by whatever special events we've got. If we have special events for summer, obviously we're going to promote those there. anything that we do with external partners, cultural organizations we include here, featured movies, sometimes reading recommendations. We always include information about something that's happening at every branch because we want everybody to understand that there's a whole system here. And of course, any news, closures, things that we need people to know about. So we also send email blasts outside of our regular monthly schedule. And we do this for any number of special events, promotions, and new services. We just started offering the New York Times digitally, so that was our most recent email blast. The examples that you see here include a special email for our makers and one advertising a live stream of our TEDx event here at the University of Nevada, and a special reading list email blast we did for the 75th anniversary of D-Day. So sometimes it's a promotion about an event or a service. Sometimes it's just, hey, there's some books that we think you might be interested in. And these reach, we have about 20,000 people that receive our email blast. So we do reach quite a few folks with this. One of the things that we haven't been great on and that we're trying to get a little better on is measuring the impact that these email newsletters have. So currently we have about a 15% open rate, which is pretty good. We'd like to see it get a little bit better. But we're happy to report that our click-through rate, people that actually open our email and end up clicking on a link to the library website or the calendar of events, is higher than the national industry standard. So we're happy about that. We'd still like to drive it up a little bit. The other thing that we're a little confused about is how much of our traffic is still happening on a desktop as opposed to a mobile device. That tells us we might not be reaching a lot of the users we're trying to hit that are rejecting computers entirely for their mobile experience. So going forward, along with looking more at that statistical data that we get back from our email platform, we're going to look to expand what we're doing with email and see what else we can do with it. So we have one branch currently piloting a program to do a little bit more branch-specific stuff to a smaller targeted group. We will be looking at data-driven decisions. That's everybody's business right now. And really that's to really analyze in more detail what our email newsletters are doing performance-wise. Where are the links that people tend to click on? What are the things that don't ever get any attention? And that will help us drive changes for those newsletters going forward. We're also looking to move our press releases into our email platform just so that we can provide a little bit more visual interest with our press releases and track all of those statistics in one place. Adding ILS opt-in and finding new creative ways to collect emails from patrons is also on our agenda. Like I said, these are all things that would be great to have had figured out when we started, but you don't have to have all the answers to get going. So we just kind of jumped in and we're adding pieces as we go to make sure that we've got all of our bases covered. And then the final thing is original content. Most of what we push out right now is events, reading recommendations, library news. We are starting to try to generate more content for our newsletters and for our website by tapping into the staff skills that we've got. So for example, last November, one of our staff members who's a geographer featured a news article for National Geography Week, and that's just a way to get our staff's interests and specialties out in front of the public, as well as generate a little bit more interest to folks that might not know that there's a lot to do at the library, even if you don't come to our building. So I know we're going to have some time for questions at the end of the session. I'd like to thank you all very much for attending today, and hopefully you guys will have a great experience offering email newsletters to your patrons going forward.
Thanks, John. Those emails are really well done. They really show how much your library system offers, and I love that you're taking a system approach. So I know, like you mentioned, we'll have some time at the end for questions. We had a few questions on your presentation, so we'll keep moving, but we're going to take care of those at the end. Right now, I want to move along, because I'm telling you, this is packed. I want to move along to Kaylee Haworth. She is the Training and Communications Coordinator at Marigold Library System in Alberta, Canada. She makes sure that the staff at member libraries know how to help patrons with e-resources and other technologies. She develops and delivers library programs, creates online content and print materials to promote library services. Wow, she is one busy lady. So while Kaylee's system includes 37 member libraries and spans 410 miles east to west, many of their libraries are small and rural. So those of you who might be at smaller libraries, you're going to hear a lot that you can use here. Also, people at a larger system. So this is going to cover the bases. Kaylee has some great tips for turning patrons into advocates for any size library, especially those on a budget. Kaylee, tell us all about it.
Hi, Kathy. Thank you. I just want to apologize for my voice. I'm dealing with a cold, so I'm hoping I'm at least understandable here. Yeah, so today I'm going to speak about promoting your library through the use of instructional materials. So you mentioned a bit about our service area, but yeah, so Marigold is located in Alberta, Canada. And in this map here, you can see the 7 regional library systems that are in Alberta and then the area that Marigold encompasses. So we stretch the province from the western border to the eastern border. The Marigold area serves a population of over 300,000. However, the majority of our libraries are in rural communities under 20,000, and many are remotely rural with populations well under 1,000. The small size and remoteness of many of our libraries can create some difficulties when it comes to promoting electronic library services. When I began my position as Training and Communications Coordinator at Marigold 6 years ago, my focus was on e-resources, the promotion and training for both library staff and patrons. At the time, almost all of the questions I was fielding were about e-books, specifically Overdrive. Patrons using e-readers were having a difficult time with the process involving Adobe Digital Editions. And e-readers were fairly new to library users and staff, with most library staff having never even seen an e-reader until a frustrated patron came in with one. The biggest issue, of course, was fear. It was a new technology that most hadn't seen or attempted to use before. And the most common reaction in a fear situation is that attitude of, I can't do this. So e-reader patrons, who at that time tended to mostly be seniors whose family members had gifted them with an e-reader, would go to their local library expecting the library staff to be able to show them how to use it. But library staff were just as unfamiliar with the devices. E-readers and, of course, smartphones were not as ubiquitous then as they are now, and a lot of library staff in our rural areas were not as used to or comfortable with newer technologies. Many of our rural libraries are single-person run libraries. We have 18 libraries with 3 or less staff members, and having to keep up with all of the new devices and services can be very daunting. So we created our first instructions as a way to help our member library staff in turn help their patrons. I just have a quote here from one of our single-person run libraries. As a one-person run library, it is difficult to keep up with all the wonderful e-resources that Marigold is able to offer, which is why I find step-by-step brochures a most helpful tool. Pardon me. By having a physical document that library staff can go through with a patron and then be able to send it home with them takes a lot of the pressure off of library staff. And patrons love having a physical document they can hold in their hands as they go through the steps. The instructions created for Overdrive were so appreciated by library staff and patrons that we decided to create them for all of our e-resources. What began as one instruction item for Overdrive has, now 6 years later, turned into 14 e-resource instruction brochures and 7 other instructional brochures for other library services. We print copies for each member library, but we also link the documents on the e-resources page of our library's websites. So even if a library runs out of paper copies, or if a patron discovers an e-resource on their own through the website or social media, instructions are always available. With the instructional brochures, we were filling a need from library staff and patrons. But how exactly is this considered promoting the library? Firstly, it turns your patrons into advocates for your services. A patron discovers that you offer, let's say, digital magazines, and with the help of an instructional brochure, is then able to go home and begin using the service right away. This is a positive customer service interaction, and customers who experience positive interactions are more likely to try additional services. Happy patrons get excited to tell others about the cool stuff their library has to offer. People love to share about their experiences with friends and family, whether in person or through social media. So by harnessing the good experience of having follow-along instructions, get them using digital services, you create advocates with free word-of-mouth advertising. And we all know budget-strapped libraries can use all of the free advertising they can get. Next, our brochures all include the Marigold branding. Having our branding clearly marked on the front of all of our instructional brochures helps patrons recognize the value of their library being a member of our system. They associate Marigold with the services they're using and know that we're here to help their libraries succeed. To help with brand recognition, the instructions are all done in the same format. We do an 8.5 by 11 bifold brochure. They feature a description of the e-resource, simple step-by-step instructions with screenshots, and links to more help and or FAQs. We know that these instructional brochures are successful through plenty of anecdotal evidence, but what empirical data do we have to prove this? Marigold headquarters has a production copier machine, and we provide printing to our member libraries. As brochures are created or updated, each library receives copies, and then at any time they need more, they just request us to print them. In 2014, we printed around 4,000 instructional brochures for our member libraries. Last year in 2019, that number rose to over 14,000. Six years ago, Marigold began offering direct-to-patron group instruction on using e-resources. If a library requested a session, I would travel out to the library to provide the session in person to their patrons. In 2015, I was asked to present 13 of these in-person sessions at our member libraries. But in 2019, I had no requests, which indicates the increased level of comfort library staff now have in providing their own e-resources support after years of having these instructional brochures available to them. So Marigold has found promotional success with instructional brochures, and we're also happy to share with other libraries. So if you'd like to create your own instructional materials by using ours as a template, I invite you to visit the e-resources page of our website, so marigold.ab.ca/e-resources, and download any of the PDF versions of the instructions that are linked there. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, thank you, Kaylee. And you're such a trooper to join us, even with your cold. But I'm so glad you did, because those were some great tips. And if it makes you feel better, you got cheers in chat for rural libraries and Canada, too. So thanks for everything. I'm going to let you rest your voice for a little bit. We're going to come back to you with some questions, I'm sure. So next up is Tommy Harden. He's the online coordinator at Mid-Continent Public Library in Independence, Missouri. Tommy has over 2 decades of experience working in public and academic libraries. He manages multiple social media platforms and makes sure their website always displays the most effective promotional messages. We asked Tommy to share with you how he uses social media to turn patrons into advocates. Tommy?
Thanks a lot, Kathy. Good afternoon, everyone. Today I wanted to chat with you about how you can use social media advocacy to promote your library and to amplify your reach on social media. While you can talk up your library's events, resources, and services on your own social networks, starting a social media advocacy program at your library is a great way to help you spread the word. It's really an extension of that age-old tactic, word-of-mouth marketing. Social media advocacy is all about leveraging the social networks of the people who already like and support you in order to help you reach a specific goal. That goal could be to drive traffic to your website. It could be to raise awareness about the library, or it could just be to help you promote signature events in the library. If you can turn as many of these third-party advocates as possible into brand advocates, those folks who proactively talk you up on their own social networks, you can really amplify your reach. Unlike influencer marketing, you don't need to pay a celebrity to be successful. The concept is simple. You provide the content and some guidance, and they share your message and hopefully their personal connection to you. For National Library Week 2019, I decided to do a social media advocacy pilot at my library after hearing about this concept at several conferences and doing a little research of my own. Since we were running a marketing campaign around the theme, Libraries Equal Strong Communities, I already had the messaging as well as great graphics from ALA that our designers had altered specifically for our library. So how did I do this? Step 1. First, it was about setting goals. First, I needed to consider what was I trying to achieve with this pilot. Which platform would be right to use? What kind of return on investment was I even expecting from this? I wanted to keep the scope small to start, so my goal was to create a brand advocacy program to help grow Twitter engagement, impressions, mentions, and followers during this specific week. So step 2, I had to get the advocates on board. After setting my goals, I needed to find and recruit these advocates. I really only wanted to identify the people most engaged with our Twitter page, so it wasn't about who had the most followers. I used the old-fashioned method of gathering information. I scanned through our mentions and our notifications for several weeks to find the right people. I was able to identify 25 folks regularly mentioning, tagging, and retweeting our content. I sent each one of them a direct message asking for their help, and that text is on the screen right now. It basically said, become an MCPL advocate for us for National Library Week. We already know you like us, so we want you to help us spread the word during this week. We'll send you content, share this content, and use these hashtags. Out of the 25 people that I approached, 20 of them actually agreed to participate, which was great. On the next screen is like several of the responses that I received, but they pretty much all were like this. Absolutely. Count me in. I would love to participate. Sign me up, which was great for us. Several days before the start of National Library Week, I sent the content, which included stats showing the impact that our library is making in community, like how many adults earned a high school diploma using our resource online high school, career online high school, how many items we collected for Food for Fines, and so on. I also sent those graphics I said that our designers actually altered for us, which had the same type of messaging, about our Food for Fines, our Library by Mail initiative, our Square One small business service, and so on. On the next slide, you can actually see some of the shares that the people actually did on social. Some of the advocates just shared the content just as we sent it to them, but like Amy, which is on the left, she added her own personal connection to the content. Amy said, "So glad MCPLMO has the Food for Fines program so I can ignore fines and then feel real good, when I donate and pay them off." And that was just great to hear. And so that takes us to the results. For that week alone, we were able, with this promotion, to reach over 39,000 accounts. Our impressions were over 221,000. Our mentions were off the charts. Our organic impressions went up. Our engagements went up, and we gained 40 new followers for that week. And the best part of this is it didn't cost us anything to do it. It just a couple hours of my time. So whether you work in a large system or in a small rural library, we all have fans, those people who already like and support libraries. Social media advocacy is all about uniting those fans, uniting your tribe, if you will, to help amplify your message. Thank you.
Hey, Tommy, thanks. People are really loving your presentation. A lot of interesting questions have popped up, so hang on as well, and we're going to talk to you in a little bit.
Okay.
Right now, great, thanks. So right now, we're going to turn to John Kraska. He is a founder and executive director of Every Library, which has provided pro bono support to 97 library communities with ballot measures and tax referendum, helping to win over $320 million in stable tax funding. John and his colleagues obviously work hard to make sure voters remember their library's value at the ballot box. Today, John is going to share how and why libraries should promote their library long before Election Day. John?
Thanks, Kathy. And this has been a fascinating conversation with the other presenters. I'm looking forward to questions. We're going to get started. My section here is going to take about 8 or 9, 10 minutes. I want to talk about marketing in a way that might be slightly different, but just as vital when it comes to the health and well-being of the library. I'm focused a lot at Every Library on the politics of doing libraries and the funding formula, whether it's a bond to build a new building, a referendum, a levy, a warrant article, a parcel tax, the funding that lets you, the good librarians in the world, get amazing things done out there. We look at marketing in a way that's a slight pivot to what our colleagues have been talking about so far today, which is, for them, it's about building use and support. I go the other way with it. I look at building support and then seeing who comes along as a user in the process. We do that support in a political kind of context. The support in this case is not just emotional, it's at a ballot box, or it's standing with you alongside other advocates for a city council or a county government or a town board or your state capital or God help us, in whatever's going on in D.C. these days. The idea that we have support from people who may or may not use the library. In fact, much of our support historically amongst voters and constituents of elected officials is not with the core user base of the library. We take a page out of what is done in politics, whether it's a political party, a major issue campaign, even some of the candidates for office, and look at what politics does. Well, if you're on one side of it, it's to operationalize your ideals, to take the value system that we have together as a party or as a movement and put it to work either in City Hall, on Capitol Hill. That value system, well, on the other side of politics, it's like, wait a minute, that person is doing something that I really, truly, strongly object to. And that party or that approach for that issue is in some ways, it's occasionally offensive. Because in politics, it's about your deeply held beliefs. It's not necessarily about your use of anything. What I want to talk about here is if politics, which is what drives people on election day to vote yes or vote no for a library, politics, which drives elected officials to behave in a particular way and constituents to stand with you as an advocate or in your defense if there's a bad bill or a bad idea happening. What drives politics is belief, deeply held beliefs and value systems. And the practice of politics is how do you activate those and how do you channel those? Now, the relationship that somebody has with a candidate or an issue is also a key driver. When you look at somebody and you say to them, you say, that person represents my interests. And the ideology behind it, we are in this together as a party or an issue, folks. In a certain respect, there is a library party that we're trying to build here at every library with our campaigns when they're going out for a vote, when we're trying to get a city council that hasn't been very favorable to the library to change their minds. People vote for candidates and ideas based first and foremost on a shared value system. That's true, and it also is sometimes divisive. But when it comes to libraries, what is the shared value system in your community around literacy? What's the shared value system in your community about support for people looking for their first, best, or next job? What's the shared value system in your community about a hand up instead of a hand out and caring, either compassionate engagement with our community or pride of place and that town that you call home? And there's an identity that people who could be supporters of the library, again, whether it's on an election day or about an issue or city council, county government, town board problem, there's a shared identity that says we're in this together. But there's also folks who are truly interested in what librarians are doing. They look at you and your personal characteristics as somebody they should be supporting. In our marketing to build support, as opposed to just looking at use, our marketing to build support is targeting not just where the money's going to go, what's our shared value system being expressed through our tax money, but how everybody who works at the library is personally a proxy, if you will, through the tax base for someone else's compassion. You are doing something that I value as a voter or as a taxpayer that I either can't or don't want to do myself. And you have to talk to me about what you've done yesterday and what you hope to do tomorrow with that funding in order for me to continue to support you. The policy issues in politics tend to be the last thing on the agenda. And even if we look at the Warren campaign right now, they've elevated the idea of talking about policy to be a value system and an identity, and not necessarily the particulars. What are the deeply held beliefs of people in your community about the work that's being done with the taxpayers' funding through the library and as the library staff? To consider that, well, is to acknowledge that there's differences between communities about what the top thing is that you're doing, and to also get deeper than just, and I'm going to be a little bit rude here, but just literacy. There's a lot of folks in the community who are willing to support the library if you could connect the dots for them about what their belief system, about how their belief system is being operationalized by the librarians. And it extends beyond literacy and learning and education into supports for people looking for their first, best, or next job, supports for the business community, for small businesses, for people looking to take an idea from their heart and their head to market. What are the deeply held beliefs that you're doing, that you're operationalizing, and how do we identify the right folks in the community to talk to about how you are putting those beliefs to work? Now, this data set here, real quick, it's from OCLC, the 2018 Public Libraries Marketing Communications Landscape Survey that they did. And I just want to bring up a point here that a lot of those folks who are grateful to you, if they're aware of what you're doing, grateful to you for the work that you're doing to put their belief system and their value system to work in the community, are never going to show up for the event because they don't actually need it. They might never need a technology program themselves. In fact, me personally, I can bridge the digital divide on the devices that my children have lost or broken. My family doesn't need it, and yet there, but for the grace of God, go I. And what about those other people in town who need that to find their first job, to communicate with their families, and yet I, personally, as a potential supporter, doesn't need your marketing message about come to the program on Tuesday. I'm good. I'm fine. But tell me what you did last Tuesday for those people who needed it. If we're only focusing on building use, we're going to be missing a whole group of people who drive by, see the parking lot is full, and think everything is fine. I would very much like to highlight how you put a small amount of smart tax money to work operationalizing that value system in town. We need some different metrics to do that, perhaps. And I'm not suggesting that anything is wrong with building use. I want to see if you've got room for 30 kids for a storytime program. I would like everyone in the community who's got kids of a certain age to be able to come to that program. And then I'm interested in everybody else in town who cares about early childhood literacy to help you have the capacity, either through staffing or through collections or through your building, to have not just 30, but 60 next year or 180. What do we want to do when it comes to having somebody put some affirmative support to us on election day, or when city council, county government, state government, the feds? Let me talk about this for a second. When we talk about tomorrow and asking people to come to a program, it's a lot of logistics. Story time, 10 a.m., Tuesday, bring your kids. When we're talking about building support, it's what did we do last Tuesday at 10 a.m. that puts our value system to work, our community's value system, our deeply held beliefs about either taking care of a population or building us up as a better, more interesting, more thriving place to live. Likewise, though, not every story is a success story. And I would like to emphasize the fact that it's important to talk about failure when it's true. Because talking about failure as an adult, honestly, to people who might have hoped that you could have done this program for kids better last week than you did, when they're brought up to speed about it, of course, talking about the failure is to demonstrate integrity. It's not that we didn't have anybody show up to the program, it's that we had too many people show up to the program and we couldn't get it done. Or that we wanted to do another program and it didn't quite work because we don't have enough staff, collections, or the wrong kind of building. Talk about your integrity. Let's people who are ideologically aligned with solving some of the same problems that you're trying to solve come along with you. And to talk about your failures with integrity is to mean that you're worthy of investment. Yes, new money extends success, but new money can fix failure as well. And the folks in town who would like to see that failure fixed they're ideologically aligned already. They want to resonate with you, your colleagues on staff, your friends group as you're trying to do fundraising, your foundation as well. Whatever the truth of the matter is, whether it's success or failure, it demonstrates that you are worthy of investment. The third story to tell is oftentimes what you've been told is the first story. And I'd like to suggest that we need to look at patron stories, not as the first story. I know that might be a little bit radical, but to say, I did this, and we did that, and we need these additional resources in order to do something that you believe in is the formula for building support. To say they benefited from it is absolutely true. But the pronoun that we need to use first is either I or we. In fact, the pronoun is not the word library. Library is not a pronoun. It's I and we as the staff, the friends, the foundation, the actualizers. All right. Who else cares is where we talk about building support. Because it's not necessarily who else needs. And if people want it and they come along, that's fantastic as users. But who else cares, either about the community that you're serving or the place that you call home? Speaking of home, this is the Berwyn, Illinois Public Library's mission statement. I was on the board here for 8 years. I was board president for 6 years. This is my hometown library. My hometown library wants to provide a welcoming, accessible environment in which all individuals receive professional services and assistance in fulfilling their educational, research, literacy, entertainment needs. And I think that's beautiful. It's one of the reasons I personally showed up to work as a volunteer on the board of trustees for my library for 8 years. And there are other people in my town who I never saw inside that building who care about education in Berwyn, who care about people having self-discovery, people being actualized through different literacies, people getting something that they want just because it's fun to read it or watch it or listen to it. And for us to be working on support building, this is really where it's at. Who else cares? It starts with a laundry list of people and organizations and agencies, and it's different for each group. And it's not just about literacy, folks. It's about all the other big stuff that we're doing to operationalize more interesting places, more thriving places, and more prosperous places. When we do this kind of marketing to build support, our coaching here at every library, whether it's a library on the ballot box or in some delicate negotiation with that town board that's, throwing a shoe at the budget, or to talk to the American public, either nationally, in a state, or in a zip code, we want to focus on support building by the answer to the question of who's spending the money, who's doing the work, where's the I and the we. So we encourage you to humanize your posts. Whether you're doing a specific post about what happened last Tuesday, where Miss Karen, who loves the kids in our community, did something powerful for those kids. Not your kid, you don't have a kid, but you believe that every kid should be ready to read at grade level. You should humanize it to make sure that they know that it's not just some sort of abstract or bureaucrat. Because in politics, we tend to get sidelined around bureaucracy. Let's talk about the expert librarian. Get past the job titles when you're doing it too, because folks don't necessarily understand. I have a great deal of respect for the MLS. I don't have one myself. I've never gone to library school. I've never worked in a library for that matter. I've been on the board. But folks are looking for that human connection, and they want to hear about your integrity and your value system yourself. And using those right pronouns. I did this, we need that. Don't hide behind the library. And one other really brief thing, this is a whole other rabbit hole, Kathy, and I'm about to wrap up here, is about how to do survey work in a way that asks people not just about their user experience, but truly about what do they hope for? What do they believe? What do they want to get done in the community? It's been good to talk to you, folks. I'm looking forward to the questions. My other colleagues are too on this webinar. Kathy, thank you so kindly.
Oh, sure, John, and thank you. And from the chat, it looks like your presentation really resonated with our attendees and was good timing for a few people that are about to embark on their strategic plan. So before we get to questions, just a reminder to stay on the line for a quick session with me about an easy way to promote your library year-round. And one more note, if you're sharing on social, remember to use hashtag NoveListConversations. So speaking of social, I'm going to first call on Tommy, and of course anyone else can chime in. Tommy, a few questions after a lot of praise for your presentation.
Okay.
People found it really interesting. I think you're going to have a few people taking you up on doing this themselves. So they're wondering a couple of things. Did you look for people who were sharing content or just liking? And were your advocates staff or patrons?
Those are good questions. I was looking for people that were doing both, people who were liking and retweeting our content. Of course, they weren't retweeting everything, but they were retweeting regular enough. And as far as was it staff or was it just regular folks, it was regular folks. Now, I know with a lot of these ambassador or advocacy programs, a lot of times it is staff members who are highly engaged, but I wasn't looking for necessarily staff. It was just regular people.
Okay.
Did I answer all the questions?
Yeah, you sure did. They had another one that would tie in with those regular people. So how do you get community members to follow you? Outside of this ambassador program that you were doing, and I know some of our other presenters use social to engage. So we can start with Tommy, but really anyone can chime in. One attendee in particular said her library is struggling despite putting their social on their newsletter, brochures, asking people in person. She said she feels like she's posting into the void and rarely gets engagement. And it sounds like other libraries struggle with engagement. Any tips there?
Well, organic reach continues to go down. And so it's all about being creative to, in the type of content that you put out there. Facebook right now, they are prioritizing what they call content that has a real strong personal interest, about people. And so getting your staff to jump in there to make it not so generic and more about you and more about your community, because I know it's hard to get seen through some of the noise out there because we struggle with some of that as well. I'm lucky in some respect because we have a budget, and so on Facebook, we're able to boost and do a couple things. But on like Twitter, we're not putting money on Twitter. And so to get seen out there, I thought this would be a great platform for me to try this ambassador or advocate program because, I was trying to build our following there. We had a few thousand people following us, but I didn't feel like our content was really getting enough engagement. And I feel like after I started this last year, it's gone up totally. I mean, we're getting new followers every week. Our ambassadors are still gung-ho. We've activated them at least twice since last year for a couple other initiatives, and they're just happy to help out.
Yeah, and I think that maybe for this person that was saying that, and really anyone, I had said at the start, maybe outside this program, but, I think if she can get one ambassador, start with one person.
It doesn't have to be big to start out. Really, it doesn't. I mean, and even her, I'm sure there's someone out there I'm sure there's some people who support her library. I mean, I'm sure she has a fan or two, and they would be probably happy to share this content on their social networks, which can help increase your reach, for sure.
Yeah. No, I agree with you on that one. That was great. Anyone else on our panel that has any engagement tips on social? Someone's asking particularly for teens, if anyone has a thought on that. Or Tommy, if you have done anything for teens. Anyone?
We do struggle with teens. Go ahead.
Oh, you do? Okay, yeah, John, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, with teens, Instagram, and maybe even Instagram is going to be your 20-somethings at this point. But Facebook for teens, it's pretty much a non-starter. One of the best things that we found, and we go up and down on our social media with levels of engagement. We're never quite where we want to be, but we do have better months than others. Really, that ties into what John was talking about with what happened yesterday. We tend to want to promote what we're doing in the future rather than sharing what we've done in the past. And we find that when we share things, photos from an event or information about something that the library did out in the community, those posts tend to be more engaging. Even if they're not driving people to a future event, people tend to like them and share them. So.
Well, and John, you didn't realize you did it, but you did a great setup to the session that I'm going to be doing in a few minutes after the webinar. I didn't even think about it, but it is a great way to talk about yesterday. So thank you for that little promotion that you didn't even know you were doing. Someone else asked about your newsletters. How do you design them? What email platform do you use? People were really impressed. So any of the nuts and bolts you want to share?
Sure. Yeah, we use Library Aware for our email newsletters, but there are a number of I saw somebody I think in the text chat mentioned MailChimp. There are a number of platforms available. They essentially just provide you with an editor interface and some level of template. So we use a template, but we customize it quite a bit. Fortunately, I have a coworker who's really kind of taken over this project and with a journalism background, so he's got a good eye for content and for design. But it does help to have a platform that can give you kind of a place to start. And like I said, you could do it from scratch if you wanted to, if you didn't have the ability to purchase some kind of email software or email platform. But we use Library Aware.
Okay, and we're happy you do. Kaylee, I don't know if you have a voice left, but if you do, I wanted you to know people really loved your brochures. They're wondering, how do you keep, as in store, so how do you store them, all the extras, and then also how do you display them? So one person started doing this and said that they take up a lot of counter space. Any tips on how you manage all of that paper?
We do have a few libraries who have wall-mounted brochure racks, which do work great, but I know wall space is at a premium in most libraries. A few of the smaller libraries, they have a binder that they keep them in, so like with the plastic pockets inside, so they store them in that and then can hand them out. But one of my favorite ways is to actually put them out throughout the library in your collection. So like the auto repair, if you have a little stand that you can put at the end of the shelf where your Chilton repair manuals are, or like Hoopla, you can put some by your comics collection or your DVD collection. So tying it into the physical collection as well.
Oh, I love that idea. That's a really great idea. Yeah, make it available where the people are that are using a similar service. That's a good idea. John Kraska, question came in for you.
Yes.
How do you reach the seniors and people who might not be comfortable with technology if you have all e-promotions?
Oh, sure. One of the key drivers of building support amongst folks who are not necessarily online is old school, tried and true retail politics. There's a version of meeting somebody where they're at. It might be a knock on the door. It might be library card sign-up month. One of the things that we did earlier in our library aware relationships has been the how to do library card sign-up month differently. And one of the ways that we advocate for changing that project up to focus on building support and reaching more folks to get a library card, especially folks who are not technologically connected, is literally a door-to-door or location-based library card sign-up event. It might be in September, it might be that time of the year, where you meet them where they're at. Yes, it's talking about what the library is doing for them, but it's also what the library is doing for the rest of the neighborhood. It might be at a laundromat. It might be at there's been some very rural places where we've done things at the Grange Hall or at the gas station, because it's the only place that we know people are going to stop. But to reach folks who are not regardless of age, you got to go to them. And it isn't necessarily about service. It's about that conversation that says, we're here to help. And it might not even be about you. It might be about your neighbors.
That's really good. I remember when you did that presentation, and also there's a post that Molly just put into chat. So check that out for more of those tips and a webinar that we did on that with John. It was really, really informative. Yeah, it was fun. So Kaylee, other John, Tommy, have you all done outreach in some non-traditional areas that worked for you for reaching people who might not be online or just, non-patrons? I mean, that's a lot of libraries are trying to reach, not only their own customers, but let's reach even further into the community, draw in people who haven't discovered the library yet, who have been away for a while, who are worried they have too many fines and, can't afford, so to speak, to come back to the library. Any thoughts on that?
Well, we here in Washoe County, we do a lot of outreaches. I'm not really involved in those, so I can't speak much to details, but we plant ourselves at community events all year long, farmers markets. We participate in our annual Christmas parade and our annual Pride parade, and that kind of thing really helps to build the visibility as well. But in terms of the details, I really have no idea what those guys do. They're great at it. Our team is great at it. I'm just not really included. Yeah,
but I love all those locations. Anyone else? Tommy, Kaylee?
Yeah, this is John, Denver Library. One of the things that we recommend is taking a look at reaching non-users in. There's a bar stools and waiting rooms kind of approach. There are times where you can do some very interesting conversations about use and about support in other people's waiting rooms, and sometimes the only other waiting room in town might be a tavern or a restaurant. It might be a dentist's office. It might be a laundromat. But there's places where people gather that are not traditional. But I got to say, one of the best ones I ever saw was actually Tommy's library, Mid-Continent, where they were working on some significant outreach around their election day, and it was Chinese restaurants and pizza places where they attached the information that they wanted to share with the widest part of the public to the takeout box or the takeout bag. It was extraordinary.
Thanks, John.
Oh, I love that.
Well, Kathy, I don't really do much outreach. I mean, as far as I'm the online marketing coordinator, so I do a lot of targeting for people online and on social, but not offline. So,
Okay,
I mean,
well,
we do try to, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I know you, Tommy. You stay pretty darn busy just taking care of what you're doing. So,
Great.
And I know, and I know your library is out in the community, and that's important. While I have you, we had another question on social, and again, anyone on the panel, feel free to chime in. This is an interesting question. I hear this sometimes. Do you post the same exact content to all social outlets? So do you cross-post the exact same thing, or do you tailor your content based on the platform? What's your strategy there for content versus platform?
Well, for me, I mean, I don't think every piece of content is good for every platform. I mean, I try to post, like when I post on Facebook, I am typically posting some of the same content on Instagram and Twitter, but I'm not doing it at the same time per se. Like if I'm posting at 10 a.m. on Facebook, I'm not necessarily posting the same thing on Twitter. I try to mix that up a little bit. I even sometimes, edit the text a little bit, a little shorter for Twitter. It could be a little longer for Facebook or Instagram. So, yeah, I just go back and forth.
Anyone else? John, Kaylee, with any of the social work that you're doing, what's your approach of content versus platform? How do you handle that strategically?
We do it a little haphazardly, I guess. Some content gets posted on all platforms. Other content, like Tommy was saying, just goes to one. And sometimes that's based on the format or what it is. I can't share a link on Instagram, so we share links on Facebook and Twitter, but not on Instagram. Right. So there's some content types drive what platform you're sharing it to. But we're just getting ready to expand a little bit more into Instagram and try to relaunch some new social media efforts. So in a couple months, we'll hope to have more answers to those kinds of questions, but not today.
Well, maybe someone has an answer to this one, which is a great follow-up to this discussion. So why not? What would be the reason not to have the same message everywhere? Wouldn't that be easier? Create it once and use it multiple times? Why would you change it up?
Sometimes,
I mean, you did talk about the link, which I think was really good. Sorry, and I think I interrupted the other John.
No, don't worry, Kathy. Sorry, I'm so eager to answer this question. The audience matters a great deal. There are times when an undifferentiated message is, if your open rates are not great, it might be because you're sending out general things instead of specific to an audience things. Not every single message is possibly targeted, I'll give you that. But unless it is a general purpose message, it shouldn't go to everybody. You should target or customize based on the audience that you're trying to reach. It might even just be let's talk about politics for a minute. If you wanted to do a program about job skills and it was all progressive language and you're in a very conservative community and it looks like you're giving a hand out instead of a hand up, you might want to differentiate your messaging based on the audience that you're trying to reach. You're not doing a disservice to your colleagues who are putting on that program by making sure that the audience who wants to hear about it, either from a user perspective, I could benefit from that, and you've targeted that audience because you have a suspicion that they could benefit from it, but also from the idea of who else cares. Not everybody cares about this. You got to respect them.
Sure.
That's what it comes down to. And if I can put one small editorial in real quick.
Sure.
Folks, try and get some budget for your social media. Organic, as Tommy identified and earlier, is just so difficult these days.
He's right.
$5 posts go a long, long way. They go $5 further than $0 posts. And if you have a friends group or a foundation that cares enough to support a program, talk to them about an overlay of a few dollars a day, a few dollars a branch, a few $100 a year. It's an extraordinarily necessary and important component of all of this marketing.
John, I think you're exactly right. A couple years ago, we started giving our branches between $300 to $500 a year so they could boost and advertise about programs, and it's made a huge difference. And that's really not a lot of money for a whole year. No. It's made a huge difference.
And I can tell you right now, at every library, it costs to reach 1,000 people who have become an active supporter of libraries, through the Every Library platform. It costs about $10. It's extraordinary how much you can do with a $10 buy. And it's got to get done.
Right.
Well, thank you, guys. Really, this was so informative, super engaging. As I promised, we are going to start on a quick special session. So you don't have to go anywhere. Stay right here. And I am just going to switch screens for a second, and we're going to dive in. So let me do that. Give me 30 seconds. I'll be right there. All right, so welcome back. I wanted to share one of my favorite tools for promoting the value of your library. And you can and should use this year-round. This is something I actually did at my library system, and you're seeing an example of it right here on your screen. So you're looking at a recent tweet from Amherst Town Library. Alexa Moore created this, and I think it turned out great. This is her tweet that she posted. The design is fresh and eye-catching. It's got just enough information to tell the library story. It's visual, which is perfect for social, and something like this makes it really easy to very clearly convey statistics, which can trip people up and quite frankly, can be really boring. So infographics can vary in style depending on the information you want to share. So I'm going to pop over into LibraryWare and show you what I mean. Now, even though I'm working in LibraryWare, don't worry. If you don't have LibraryWare, you'll still get some ideas to use. So I'm here on our homepage at LibraryWare, and I'm just going to go ahead and search infographic. And everything that you're going to see has been created by our designers specifically for libraries, so there's really minimal editing that you have to do. So here's the one that Alexa used in her tweet. I talked to her briefly about this. She did personalize hers a little bit, which is great. She added a few things to it, which, of course, is super easy to do. I'm just going to scroll through here, and I wanted to show you these. John Crasta probably remembers these. These are part of a series of templates that we put together for libraries that are doing ballot measure information campaigns. So sometimes an infographic can be very customized to whatever you're doing. We've got some for the census. This is a great one. I really advise using something like this when you are going to be promoting your library card and all the value that you can bring to it. It's very focused on that. I'm going to show you a few more, and then we're going to dive into one of them. This one here is great for summer reading. They're really easy to use, and they're great for town hall meetings to share with elected officials. Let me go ahead and show you what I mean with this one, what you can do. And you can look at it a little more closely. So as soon as it opens, we're sharing some bandwidth here. All right, so I'm going to shrink that down a little bit when we're in our editing space. And so these are really easy to work with. You could go ahead and change this just like you would with Word or Publisher. I can go ahead and change this. Maybe I'm from Marigold. Maybe I work up in Canada, which is probably as far from the far from where I am as you can possibly get right now. But I'm with you in spirit, Kaylee. So maybe I'm at Marigold Public Library and I want to change that out. In LibraryWare, we have millions of images that our subscribers can use. You don't have to worry about the copyright restrictions. We take care of that for you. So here's some icons. You can easily find those in our image gallery. I'll show that to you really quickly. We have images. We have graphics that our designers have made, book jackets, cover art, a lot of things that you can use in the pieces that you're creating. We have some customers in Canada that are doing some pieces regarding the fires that unfortunately they're facing in Canada. So lots of images that we keep loading as we go through that here. You can change out your colors, etc. So as you make these edits, you can go ahead and save it. Another great bonus, if you want to take advantage of what Tommy was sharing and some of the other guests, panelists, you can publish that right away to Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, and if you have NoveList Select, you can go ahead and get that posted right inside your catalog for people to come upon. Maybe you want to print it out and use that at a town hall meeting, use those with elected officials. You can also save this as an image. We have libraries that use these on their website to serve as a mini annual report. Lots of different ways that you can use these. As I said, I used infographics at my library system, and I have to tell you that coming up with the format was a lot of work, so it's nice to have those available. Lots of different reasons to use them. I just think they're super easy for people to understand, a great way to get your information across in a really clear way. So, in fact, here I will open up one of these. You can see it a little more closely. For those of you who might be doing any kind of ballot initiative, something like that. So that's how you would use those. I'm going to ask our chat team if we have any questions that I should pay attention to in the chat. This one is actually double-sided, so that's available as well. But again, really easy to customize and putting in that picture like John said. Speaking of John, this is a really great way to talk about yesterday. So here's the impact that your library is having. And I think that's a great story to tell for your library. All right. Well, that was a quick session. I hope you enjoyed that. I really hope you'll consider using an infographic to share the news about your library and tell your story. Go ahead and check those links in the chat. You'll be able to go ahead and get the recording and the slides. Don't worry about that. Those will be coming your way. We appreciate you joining us, and go ahead and have a great day. Thank you.